My grandmother told me the world would end in a year. So I spent the whole year praying and reading the Bible.
I want to emphasize this pretty hard, is that, you know, if you go and read the Bible, you get one version of things, but there's a lot of ministers out there that want to spin the Bible, want to, you know, interpret things a certain way and so on. And so you find people pulling passages from various places and saying, oh, this means X, Y, Z, give me money. That sort of thing. So that's pretty much what's happened here. Was this rapture stuff is actually takes passages out of various books of the Bible that were written at various different times. We have Daniel, Revelations, Thessalonians, and some of the other books, and they've been woven together into a narrative about this is how the end times is going to happen, and this is how the end of the world is going to happen. And there really isn't support for this. I mean, the people writing the Bible didn't intend this, right? It's a modern interpretation. It was an interpretation proposed by a minister, a traveling minister by the name of Darby. I forget his first name. You might remember it. But this is like the turn of the to the 20th century. So this is over 100 years ago, and this idea has become known as dispensationalism. The idea that the Bible is broken up into 7 eras or dispensations where we have different types of interactions with God and different sort of purposes for these different eras. And we're living in the last one according to this, and this is when Jesus is going to come back, right? We have the era of Adam, we have the era of Moses, we have the era of, you know, all these sorts of things. These are dispensations. And so this whole movement that Hagee is part of is called premillennial dispensationalism, which basically is a very specific interpretation of this idea about when the order of events. So premillennial has to do with when the rapture is going to be relative to the tribulation, right? So all of this is complete nonsense BS as far as I'm concerned.
I may be wrong.
Yeah.
But I don't know enough about Darby to say, but the real proponent of
was Schofield.
Was Schofield for all this apocalyptic.
Yeah, Schofield actually codified it in a Bible, a version of the Bible where people could go and read it. So he was kind of an evangelist, if you will, for this idea.
Right. It has become incredibly popular in most churches, but to varying degrees. You know, as to how much faith they're willing to put into this idea that we're living in the end times or the end is about to come, etc. It's the book of Revelation, by the way. You know, I talked about this a little bit during the discussions on the biblical canon. Is such that almost didn't make the Bible.
Revelation?
Oh yeah, when the process of canonizing it, there were several early, you know, bishops and church fathers who just basically said, this is the ravings of a lunatic, and I don't see this as inspired writing. And, well, they were kind of overruled and kicked off the board, so to speak, with regard to how things were canonized. But we'll skip past that. But honestly, I mean, I've always been able to understand where Schofield and some of these others get their particular interpretation. When you have the writings in Revelation themselves are divided up all over the place into 7s. I mean, numerology is this huge thing in the Bible. So saying that the Bible itself could be divided up into epics is perfectly reasonable, provided you have all the other crazy presuppositions that lead to it. 7 bowls, etc. And so once you've bought into this significance,
symbolism, right?
This symbolic significance, then you can do the rest of it. The problem is that Revelation, like so many, it's like the TV psychics. It's so artsy and vague in what it's saying that it can be interpreted in a number of different ways.
Yeah.
And so you get a bunch of church leaders together who seem to think that they've interpreted it in the same way. And now all of a sudden you have a movement.
Right, and it's really taken off. And I think it plays into people's fears. I think when people see, you know, a society that's struggling and a society that's in decay, or the society that's at war and things are not looking good, you might be tempted to sort of say, well, gosh, I wish I had an out, I wish I had an escape, I wish I could hedge my bets here.
Yeah.
And I think it plays into that sort of anxiety.
Well, it's a tool to allow people with no skills and no expertise to extort money from other people for no good reason. No matter how good things are going, you can always open up Revelation and say, don't get too comfortable. I realize we're living in an era of great health, and the life expectancy has been extended, and there's great prosperity, and food is abundant, but don't you dare get too comfortable, because the end is coming, and the devil wants you complacent.
Keep them afraid. Keep them afraid and keep them sending...
Mail your checks or money out. Never mind.
So there were a couple very good quotes here, couple paragraphs that I'd like to read from an article called "Their Beliefs Are Bonkers, but They Are at the Heart of Power," which was written in 2004. But it provides some of the basics of the rapture stuff, and I'd like to hit that just to kind of... yeah, and then we have a caller. So let me take this, and we can take the caller.
Okay.
Just to kind of let everybody know where this Bible prophecy stuff comes from. In the United States, several million people have succumbed to an extraordinary delusion. In the 19th century, two immigrant preachers cobbled together a series of unrelated passages from the Bible to create what appears to be a consistent narrative. Jesus will return to earth when certain preconditions have been met. The first of these was the establishment of the State of Israel. The next involves Israel's occupation of the rest of the biblical lands, which includes most of the Middle East, and the rebuilding of the third temple at the site of the now occupied Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa mosques, which would piss off the Islam.
That's why we need to bomb Iran and everybody first, so that they're not around to be too upset.
Yeah, when their shrines are
Dome of the Rock,
when their shrines, when they consider equally as holy, are torn down. Anyway, the legions of the Antichrist will then be deployed against Israel, and the war will lead to a final showdown in the Valley of Armageddon. The Jews will either burn or convert to Christianity, and the Messiah will return to earth. What makes this story so appealing to Christian fundamentalists is that before the battle begins, all true believers, i.e. those that believe what they believe, will be lifted out of their clothes and wafted up to heaven during an event called the Rapture. Right? Not only do the worthy get to sit at the right hand of God, but they will be able to watch from their seats in their political and religious opponents being devoured by boils, sores, locusts, frogs, and during the 7 years of tribulation which will follow.
You know, I kind of pictured John Hagee's fat ass in a lawn chair on a cloud with like a six-pack of non-alcoholic beer, just watching the rest of us get eaten by locusts.
Right. Well, I had a different thought. I thought, well, you know, gosh, if Hagee's a bit overweight, maybe he should lose a little weight so he can be swept up in the clouds, you know. If he really believed this stuff, he'd
I mean, if you're going to be swept up out of your clothes, nobody wants to see you naked. I mean, that's for sure.
Especially not in a lawn chair,
but, you know,
sitting over top of you.
These are the same people who believe that when you're raptured up and you're going to get a new and perfect body.
Right. Right. So this is pretty crazy. But that's kind of the gist of it, is this notion of a rapture, all these events, and there's a website, there's lots of websites dedicated to this, but there's one in particular that's just over the top. You go look at raptureready.com. That website is tracking on a daily basis various indices that they think are the signs of the apocalypse. So corruption in the government, or kids picking their nose, or whatever little index they come up with a total that's coming up for the day, and then they add it up, and this supposedly gives you a UV meter on when the rapture is going to come, and this thing has been going on for years. There's actually there's actually businesses out there that are supposed to deliver messages after the rapture happens. So you can pay them money to have a message delivered to your atheist uncle or your atheist son. Screw you, you were wrong. I don't know. It's laughable from my standpoint, but at a deeper level, it's very disconcerting, because these people believe this stuff. They're paying money. They're invested in it, and it's mind-boggling.
I guarantee you, I promise, I will not. Well, I can't do that. For as long as I'm an atheist, if you'd like, you can send me your stuff along with money. And if you're ever raptured, I'll make sure it's distributed to whichever of your relatives weren't raptured, along with a personal message from you that explains how you knew ahead of time you were going to be raptured. I can take care of it, because I'm not going to be raptured. We both believe that. I mean, you believe it because I don't deserve to be, and I believe it because I think you're nuts. But I'm not going to be raptured, so I can watch out for you.
Right.
It's a hell of a business opportunity.
Right. So you see bumper stickers that say, you know, come the rapture, this car will be empty, or this car will be unmanned. And our response is, you know, rapture is a world without religious nuts.
Yep.
Bye. The world would end in a year. So I spent the whole year praying and reading the Bible.